So, with it being Friday and another weekly on the horizon, the topic of debate recently has been changes to PvE. A lot of people do not feel like changes to PvE in terms of making it harder are necessary or good for the game, and that is something that I want to talk about a little bit. First of all, I think it's incredibly jarring right now that the community is almost playing two different games. Like when you log on to Deepwoken, at least in the past, everybody was generally playing the same game. You went and you fought monsters, you did hell mode or whatever, you made your build to like get items, but you were always on some level doing PvP, if not to defend yourself, at least like that was to create your build, or you're really into chime and comp play. We were all sort of in the same playing field. And now we've gotten to a point almost where the PvE players are only interested in PvE. They don't do anything involving chime or ganks or anything like that. The PvP players are only involved in like comp ganks or doing chime ranks, and they're not doing anything like the bosses unless they have to for the build. So the devs have to almost cater to two entirely different subsets of the community, which of course is impossible to do. It's incredibly jarring to me. But getting into the topic, a lot of people don't like the idea of nerfing PvE builds. First of all, I'm gonna just say, low-key, get over it. A lot of people, oh, don't nerf damage versus monsters. People grinded hours to get those sets. It's so essential to the game. If you're a PvP player, your build is at risk every single Friday. They could rework one talent or one mantra and the entire build is gutted. You've got to start over. So we don't get any special treatment. And if it comes to a topic about items or armor schematics, of course it's been a couple months, but think back to like HP sets, dupe sets, physical and magical armor resistance, like things like the Justicar schematic. Things essential to having an effective PvP build, those got completely gutted one random Friday. I don't understand why there's this idea that we have to cater to PvE players like they're helpless fucking children when everybody else is just at the whims of a weekly update. It doesn't make sense to me. And of course, and Arch has sort of said the same thing. If you make a build only for fighting bosses, like everything you have no mobility mantras, you have no like resistance cards or anything like that. If your whole build is centered around fighting a boss, and then you get into a gank and you have no real way to fight back against somebody whose entire build is centered around PvP, that's not a game design flaw. That's just your fault. Like, that's just a you problem. There's no world where I'm supposed to feel bad that I beat somebody in a fight who made a build entirely involving fighting NPCs. That's just not my problem, you know? It might suck, but, you know, think back to how Deepwoken used to be for the longest time. Skill issue, dude. Wiping is part of the game. If you didn't want to wipe in a stupid way, you should have had at least some way to fight back on the build. And then, I guess kind of building off of that, like, a lot of people conflate issues with the game being difficult with just actual balancing updates. And I can meet you in the middle there. Deepwoken balancing is in literal hell. And I think that starts with a lot of cheese opportunity, especially anything involving an expanding AoE mantra. Shadow Vortex, Permafrost Prison, Emotion Wave. A lot of these expanding AoE builds, especially in ganks, are incredibly unfair. They exist to be cheese. If I walk up to you and I hit you with a Emotion Wave, Storm Cage, Shadow Vortex, Rising Shadow, there is straight up nothing you can do about that besides just die. And I agree that that kind of stuff should not exist in the game. Now, something we had in verse 1 to sort of combat like getting combo chained was the longer a combo goes on, the less damage you actually do to the player. I don't see why we can't bring that back in a revitalized sense so that if you get stuck in one of those like gravity field storm cage combos, the longer it goes on, the less damage you actually take. Because in a lot of ways, especially now, even with venting, there's just a ton of combos you can't escape from. And when you put that in a gank setting, when multiple different people are using Emotion Wave or Permafrost, there is straight up nothing you can do. A lot of the problems with the game being difficult or unfun to play just comes from a place of a really unbalanced meta, which as you guys are going to see later today, is beginning to change.